yeah, for this particular purpose, then yeah, I'm a quite traditional guy, so normally I don't do screen sharing, just for the recording. But yeah, for dialogues and those kind of things, I don't do that. But yeah, so but the Buddha and many disciples of the Buddha did the same thing with the wheel of life. So I thought, it's, yeah, why not? You know, it's kind of normally we go with the people here to the Tanga and then explain. Maybe we did once. I'm not sure. Yeah, a few people. Yeah, we did one weekend on the wheel of life. So yeah, that gave you a little bit idea, because we talked about the 12 links, right? And from ignorance all the way up to old age and death, we repeat that again with this kind of drawing, so that we can relate to that, how it relates in this wheel of life, how we are born in samsara. Yeah, yeah. You ready? Yeah. Yeah. Oops. Can you see? Oh, I'm over there. Yeah. You can see, right? Yeah. Okay. So that's the wheel of life. You see? The wheel of life. So I start with this figure. It's called the Yama, or the Lord of Death. You know. So he holds, because of, you know, we're dying all the time and reborn. So it symbolizes impermanence, right, of the whole cycle, so to say. Then here you see the Buddha. So the Buddha is pointing to the path of liberation, which is symbolized by the moon on the other side. See that? Yeah, so that's the way out of samsara. Yeah, we talked about the Four Noble Truths yesterday. Yeah, so actually the Buddha is pointing towards the last two truths, right? The true cessation and the true paths. Yeah, that leads us beyond samsaric suffering. So that's what the Buddha actually represents in pointing towards the moon, right? That's kind of the peace of nirvana. And in order to achieve the peace of nirvana, you have to manifest the true cessation, and you have to meditate on the true paths, right? In relation with the last two truths among the Four Noble Truths. And then everything in samsara is, yeah, is, as you see, in the Lord of Death. So then, what is the cause of samsara? Yesterday we talked about the three poisons mind, remember? What are the three poisons? You remember? There they are, symbolized by three animals. You know? So you see the pig down below. It doesn't give a description here, but you see a pig down below, right? Here, you see? And out of his mouth comes a snake. You see, I can follow the snake. It's kind of anger or aversion. And the pigeon here, you see, is attachment. So anger and attachment comes out of the mouth of ignorance, because the pig is representing ignorance. You know, we say that by ignorance, as we just talked about, we have this grasping of the concrete I am mine. Yeah? And because of that, we create all kind of karma by depending on afflictions, like attachment and anger, and other afflictions as well. Yeah, but here the three poisons, it being in the center of this drawing, meaning it's the center of samsara. It's kind of the root cause is ignorance, right? As we often discuss. Yeah? So that's symbolized by the pig and the two other afflictions. Then you see here animals, or yeah, creatures, so to say. You see black and white. The circle has two aspects. Yeah? So black and white. So black, you see beings going down. You see that? Animal, spirit, hell realms. And the white part, beings going up, humans and gods. So that means by negative karma created, we go down. Yeah? So we talked about the 12 links of interdependence, and we saw in order for karma to be complete, you need those factors, as we just discussed, remember? Yeah, those factors to be complete. If those factors are all complete of basis, intention with that tree, right? Intention had the discriminating factor, had the motivation, and the affliction. And then the deeds, and then the final step. So also for negative actions, for example, the act of killing animals or killing human beings, you know, when all those factors are complete, this propelling karma can cause you to fall in a lower state of existence, like an animal or a spirit or a hell being, you know. Yeah. So with positive karma, same thing. We only talked about negative karma. till now, right, before the break. So with positive karma, for example, take the act of generosity, right? For a good purpose, helping a particular organization. You see an organization is in need, right? And you have the app or on the website, you see a possibility to donate, right? So the discriminating factor is there's organization in need or it helps beings or benefits society or whatsoever, right? And then you have a motivation, a kind of good intention with that. Yeah? And affliction is not really present maybe from the point of view of attachment and anger, but there's this ignorance is of course present, right? I am going to make this donation. I, who you think is existing from its own side, right? So those three factors are there. And then the deed is then actually making the donation, yeah, whatever amount you like to give to them. And then when the money goes out of your bank account and is being received by this organization, that's the final step. You see that? So also with positive karma, because all those factors have to be complete for throwing karma, the more complete our positive karma is, the better. So whatever positive thing we do, if it's vacuuming your room with the intention to purify, as we discussed in one of the previous, remember? The way of doing purification method with the 4 opponent powers, when you vacuum your room or when you do your washing machine, right? Or having a shower, same thing. You can think it purifies all negative karma, and you apply the 4 opponent powers, right? And so in that way also there's a basis, an intention, a deed, and a final step, right? Yeah, you see that? So also with positive karma, it's very essential to make sure all those factors are complete in order to make it a very strong positive karma. A very good motivation, yeah, for good intention. You see that? And that causes actually the karma to go up, yeah, in higher states of rebirth. Yeah, you see that? So with negative karma, it's important to make sure to prevent one or more of those factors to be complete, to prevent the karma from being heavy, right? You see that? Yeah? So we can play with it. We can play with afflictions. We can, subdue our mind, right? We can play with intentions and motivations. So we can make sure that negative karma that is being created doesn't really become complete by these intentions aspect. And then, of course, we try to have regrets after we've done the deed, and then also the final step of rejoicing in negative deeds doesn't come. So with 4 opponent powers, we can prevent heavy negative karma from being created, and then, of course, we try to purify after. So then the potential for the result to come up can be taken away. So there's a few things to know. So here, yeah, you see, because of the center circle of the, ignorance and the two other afflictions represented here with anger and attachment, we create karma, right? The second link of samsara. That's this black and white karma, or virtuous and non-virtuous karma. You see that? Yeah. Yeah. So karma is being created. Yeah, that's this kind of the throwing karma in this aspect is being created. That leaves an imprint in consciousness, right? So that imprint in consciousness comes at ripening at a time of death. Yeah, with grasping and grieving. We come to that later, but first we go from in to outside, And then we can be reborn in either low states of rebirth, like here, or high states of rebirth. So where do you want to start? You want to start in the most terrible one or lesser one? Let's start in the most terrible one. The hell beings. Yeah. So it's kind of, very interesting stories about hell beings. Hell being is kind of, is not a location, right? It's not kind of you go down Bulgaria and, you go down in Bulgaria and then, it looks more than long. Oh, sorry, no, I'm on the wrong picture. Yeah, this is a hell being, people being cooked alive, for example. Yeah, I mean, joking aside, but it's a mental state, Hell beings are mental states. And they, like spirits, they're around us also. Hell beings also around us. Yeah, it's not a particular location as such. I find it always easy to relate it to you sitting on a bench in a park or in a room in a house. a person next to you having a bad trip, take some substances and really stuck in an experience. One of my friends had that the whole city was full of fire, including the house living in. He went through so much suffering, right? But we just sitting next to this person, nothing is wrong. You see that? So it's a kind of mental state, but it's or a dream, you know, like that. But it's a mental state, but it's a little bit more intense than a bad trip or something like that. You know, so that's hell beings. Yeah. Then the spirit realm, and then here especially it talks about spirits of the hungry ghost. You see, big bellies and very thin throat. You see that? Very difficult to get food into the body, and there's a lot of fear and heat and cold suffering, as we saw before when discussed. So if spirits exist or not, or hell beings exist or not, or some people say, oh, I haven't seen, but some people see spirits, right? Spirits are everywhere. It's kind of, you know, there's haunted places sometimes we see, or there's very interesting videos if you want to see of you know, captures of spirits here and there. It's kind of, what we cannot see doesn't mean doesn't exist. Yeah? So you can examine that. So that's another state of beings. Yeah. So this we're talking about the 6 realms of samsara. Yeah, we often talk about 6 realms. So this is the spirit realm, this is the hell realm, and then this is our animal friends. You know, Doji the cat falls in this category, for example. Yeah. and all, you know, dogs and cats, and it's true. Yeah, that's the animal realm. And then there's the suffering of those individual realms, right? As we sometimes also meditate or contemplate. So that's called the lower realms of cyclic existence. That's why they're on the lower part, because there's more suffering in the animal realm, spirit realm, and hell realm. Yeah, animals sometimes, when you're born as a cat or dog in the West, then it's quite comfy, you know, compared to a street dog or a street cat in India, for example. Yeah, you see that? So that's the lowest state of existence. And we talked about before, right? Good completing karma and bad throwing karma. So the lowest states of existence, these 3, they are negative or bad throwing karma. Yeah, but sometimes, like, you know, pets, they can have good completion karma. They're born in a state which is by itself not good, like an animal, but the completing karma is quite good, meaning they've been fed well, and whenever they let them hear themselves, they've been taken care of. Some of the animals are being treated better than some humans on this planet, right? So yeah, so that means this kind of throwing karma is when all those factors are complete. We just discussed, right? For throwing karma, all those factors have to be complete. Yeah. When 1 or 2 factors are missing, then it becomes kind of completion karma. Yeah. So we can have good throwing karma as being born as a human, but not good completion karma. For example, being born as a human in a war zone or in Africa without food. Right? Yeah. See that? Yeah. Yeah. And then that's good throwing karma, but bad completion karma. Animals, for example, can have good completion karma, but it is bad throwing karma. Right? You see that? Yeah, like the pets and the animals in India on the streets, generally speaking, is bad throwing karma and bad completion karma. Yeah, you can see that? Yeah? All right, so that are the 3 lower realms of existence. Then we go up. Where are we? I think this is here. You can see properly. Yeah, look at that. Our human friends. Hello, there we are. So this kind of, generally speaking, the human birth is a bit better than animal realm, right? So yeah, there's some more happiness involved. Yeah, you see people enjoying their life. You see that? Farmers and, you know, yeah, anyway. So then there's also, So there's also the Lama, this kind of the demigods, as we call them. They have a lot of jealousy and fighting each other. They are a bit kind of, you see there's kind of a lot of fighting going on. They're born as a kind of god, similar to the pure god lands, but it's kind of desire-related kind of aspect of life. You see that? Yeah. And then the top is the God realms. Really having fun and enjoying life until you die, and then you fall back into those states of existence. As we talk about, it's very difficult to get up, but it's very easy to fall down. Right? Yeah, so the God realms. Yeah, see the 6 realms of existence, meaning humans. Yeah. Then we have the God realms of the form and formless realms. Yeah. And we have what we call the demigods. Yeah, they're similar to gods or humans, but they have a lot of jealousy and fighting going on. So there's 3, and then the animals, and the hell beings, and the spirits. Yeah? Okay? Now we go to the 12 links of interdependence. What do you see here? This person is blind, okay? So this person is blind. It's kind of similar if you have a blind person that has been put in a field, then there's no way for that person to know where to go, right? If you've been put in a huge field and blind, you don't know where to go. You see that? So there's this ignorance. Yeah, there's ignorance, the root of samsara. Then, based on ignorance, we have karmic formation, right? So what you see here, you see only one pot. Normally, you'll see a drawing with many pots. It's kind of a pot maker. He makes small, big, all kinds of pots. That means that karma has many aspects: heavy, less heavy, positive, negative. Yeah, so there's many aspects there. Yeah, so that's kind of karmic formation, right? Link number 2. We have ignorance. Based on ignorance, afflictions arise. We act in a particular way that acts and leads a kind of imprint, right? So where is this imprint planted? That imprint is planted in number 3, consciousness. So what is this? You see a monkey there. Monkeys, they like to jump from tree to tree, right? That's why they're monkeys for. And so that means that, you know, our consciousness goes from one place to the other without obstruction, yeah, especially when we die, for example. Yeah. Monkeys, they like to jump. In Dharamsala, there's a lot of monkeys, and then Lama Rinpoche made a pool for them. They could wash, especially in summer. And there was a tree, and there was a few branches, and then the young monkeys, they just jump in the tree and then jump in the pool. And then we had this kind of course on Lamrim with young people mostly, and then very serious talking about hell realms and business, sometimes not very often, but talking about serious stuff of karma. And then they couldn't talk because we were all in silence, right? So they were outside and they could watch the monkeys jumping in the pool, and that caused kind of a lot of relaxation because they really had to laugh. It's very funny to see jump, and then jump in the water. Yeah. So that's our consciousness, right? It's kind of jumping from one thing to the other. Yeah. So then we talked about name and form, remember? Body and mind. Yeah. So a vessel, we have this vessel of body and mind, right? Which can carry all kinds of things, you know, different types of consciousness and different types of senses, especially. Yeah. So it's kind of this boat is carrying. Yeah? It's kind of the vessel of body and mind. Yeah. Then after name and form, what's the next one? Name and form comes number 5. Sources. No, we translated Geshe. Yeah. Sources. You see, there's a Tibetan house. It's not a house here in London. It's a Tibetan one. So that means there's windows. You see that? Yeah. So the windows, they represent the doors of the senses, right? Yeah. So yeah. So that means the doors of the senses by itself, they don't function. So inside, the house can be empty, but it just used as a support for consciousness to function, right? So that's the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, and the body, and the mind. So yeah, the body. So there are the 5. Yeah, you also see here, yeah, it's more than 5 windows, but yeah, that's kind of the openings of the senses, right? The sense powers, or Geshe, right? Yeah, sense powers. No, we translate it. Yeah. Then after sense powers, then contact. And what do you see there? A couple, and they have contact with each other. Yeah, so that's kind of represented here in this picture. Yeah, because after we have the sense powers, then there's an object, and we come in contact with an object, right? The consciousness meets a particular object. And then, by meeting the object, there's different types of feeling. Pleasure, unpleasure, and kind of neutral. So this picture here is more or less pleasure aspects, and this picture, slightly different, is kind of unpleasure. There's an error in your eye. You know, if you put something in your eye, it's quite painful. So you can imagine if you put an error, then it's even more painful. It's feeling, right? It's kind of the representing the feeling of you know, suffering in this case. Then, after feeling comes, what is after feeling comes? 8. Yeah, number 8. Grasping. We translate it. Grasping. Grieving. Yeah, grasping and grieving. Yeah. So grasping is this. You see this guy? Chang. Chang means Tibetan beer. He's a kind of Tibetan artist. I mean, Andy Weber was a Westerner, but it's based on a Tibetan kind of drawing. So with grasping and grieving, it's like beer, you know, or alcohol. If you drink a little bit, you want to drink more. Yeah. I remember the first time I got drunk in Switzerland. We had I was very young, and we had cheese fondue, you know, cheese fondue? Okay. Cheese fondue, and then wine on the side. And in cheese fondue also they put kirsch. Kirsch is very strong, it's like 60-something%, something like that. So then I was a little bit kind of, ooh, yeah. But anyway, so that means normally people, when they get into drinking, then you take a little bit, you're going to take more, you know. So that's kind of aspect of, you know, grasping. Yeah. And then craving, you see, the monkey again. But this time, wanting, you know, food. Monkeys, they really, it's very strong. In Dharamshala, same place again, I did once a retreat, and I mean, did a few times retreat, but once it was so hot, I was in this kind of, before they had some other building, before I did retreat in Rinpoche's house, because that in the early days, there was kind of, yeah, under the roof, so it was quite hot. So then I opened the door one day, but then Mr. Monkey came in, and I had some offerings on my altar, and sometimes in a dormitory, the same thing. And the monkeys, they're quite big, and the teeth are very, they show the teeth, and they know we're not going to do anything, because if they do, then they bite us, and they know that. So they just walk in, look at you, and look at the offerings, just grab them, and go out. So, and then they fight each other for the food. You know, this incredible, no, mine, not mine. This kind of so much fighting. So there's this kind of incredible craving, grasping, no? It's grasping. Yeah, it's grasping at things. You see? Yeah. Yeah, so monkey is a very interesting phenomenon to see in Dharamsala. Maya, who's here, she knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's very interesting to see that incredible, strong reflections, you know, to my food. And then they eat as much as they like, and they put here, you know, in here. So they eat as much as they like. They're full already, the stomach is full, but then put it here for later, in here, and then it's all full with food. And then they try to carry as much as they can. And then all the monkeys, they like to attack them. Yeah, it's kind of, yeah, there's more stories about monkeys like that. Once I was trying to chase them away, but then 3 or 4 of the big ones came after me, and I just went in one room and closed the door. Luckily, one of the dogs, we have very good dogs in Tushita, they came in and chasing them away. They were frightening sometimes. Yeah. So there's this kind of grasping, craving. Where am I? Here, right? Yeah. Grasping, craving, becoming. Yeah. So yeah, you can see it a little bit. Just think that this is a lady who is pregnant. Right? It's kind of aspect of becoming. Yeah. So grasping and craving activates previous throwing karma, right? Imprints. Right? Remember? Yeah. So then this kind of establishing karma, as we call it, becoming. Yeah. So we said number 2 right? Karma is throwing karma, the potential to throw you another rebirth. So when the link of becoming, you know, number 10 in sequence, yeah, that's kind of the potential to throw you, yeah, of getting, yeah, here represented by a lady who is pregnant. You can see properly, but yeah, she also has Tibetan shoes. And then, birth. You can't really see, yeah, there is one baby coming out. You see that? Yeah. So that happens when you are born. Yeah, now it happens in hospitals, but in the early days, holding a tree outside. Yeah. So there's birth. And then after birth, what happens? Old age and death. So actually, this should be a very old man, normally, and then he's carrying a corpse. You know, in Tibet, they cut up the corpse and feed it to in the early days, feed it to the vultures and everything. Because you cannot bury people in the ground, it's all frozen. And wood is not widely available, so they just cut the body into pieces and then offer to the birds, the vultures. So it's carrying. You see that? So that's the 12 links, basically. Yeah. From ignorance, and then goes all the way around, you know, to the 12 links up till old age and death. Yeah, and that's the wheel of life. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. So I can send you the link of this website, and they can play around and then read. Unfortunately, there's no description with this. I'm not sure. It should be there. But I can send you another copy with a description. Does it say something here? Is this a verse? No, I don't think so. Maybe there is something. No. Anyway, I give you another PDF file, then you. Oops, stop share. Yeah. Okay, there we are back again. Okay. You saw that? It's nice, no? Something else then. Just TENZIN NAMDAK in the screen. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, anyway, I will ask Jackie to forward you this link, and then also I've one a PDF file with a description of those links, so then you can play around and yeah, better play around with these things than other things on the internet maybe. So then you can relate it back and forth. Yeah, so to summarize those points, the 12 links explain how we are reborn in this cycle of samsara, right? And we saw there are two types of karma, throwing karma and completion karma, right? So for throwing karma, you have to have all those factors complete, as we discussed, right? Basis, intention, which is subdivided into 3, as we saw, right? Yeah, deed and final step. If all those factors are complete, either positive or negative, then you saw the white and the black half circles, remember? And so it can propel you in one of the states of existence, either a higher state of existence or a lower state of existence. Yeah. And if those 4 factors are not complete, it has the power to propel you or throw you in a rebirth, but it's kind of completion karma. Yeah, as we talked about being born as an animal, as Dorje the cat, here in Jamyang, for example, is negative throwing karma, but quite good completion karma because it's been taken care of quite well. Whenever you say meow, then he gets some food or gets some attention. Right? So he's a very lucky one. And that's not true for cats in India who live in the wild without owner. They have bad throwing karma and bad completion karma. You see that? But that's just very black and white. There's so many other possibilities possible because we create karma every split second, right? And not only every split second since beginner's lifetime. So that means there's so many causes and conditions involved that it's a very complex system. A very complex system. If you're into David Bohm and you study what is implicate order and what is the quantum potential, and what are hidden variables, then you know how difficult it is. And that's also true in these subtle aspects of karma, right? So for an ordinary being, very difficult to comprehend. If you have a computer model and with a lot of variables, it's much more difficult to understand what's going on, especially if one variable influences the other one, for example, and you have thousands of them. You know? So that's kind of, the conventional aspect of the implicate order of David Bohm, if you're interested in that kind of aspect of reality. Yeah, so that's kind of hidden variables for why hidden? For ordinary perception. Because some people with clairvoyance, they can understand, you know, or they know. For example, why are we here together? When did we create the causes? And where did we create the causes? You know, we here together on Zoom, it's not random, right? So that means that once there's been created causes for that to happen, and a particular location and a particular time. So what is the location and what is the time? It's called extremely hidden or very hidden. Right? So it's kind of very difficult to pinpoint. But it's karma. It's kind of cause and effect relationships. Nothing is random. You know? But yeah, so in Buddhism we have kind of very hidden phenomena, and also in quantum mechanics we talk about this kind of, you know, implicate order aspects of reality we don't really know, but there's something that has an influence, and that's what David Bohm came to the conclusion. It's very interesting. Yeah. So karma in that way is a very complex system, and then we just try to understand it with these 12 links, and what is throwing karma and what is completion karma, to get a little bit idea of these points of karma and the wheel of life, right? So then go back to the 12 links to make the picture even more complete, you know, to get an overview. And then with all this information, when I send you the link, you have another look with a description, and then try to relate it back and forth. Because the 12 link is very important to be understood, you know, and so many aspects to that. We just briefly went over a few. Another point, Nagarjuna says, Tambo Gyedan, Tambo Gyeba, Gunyumons, meaning first, Tambo Gye, number 1, number 8, and number 9 are afflictions. Number 1 is ignorance, right? Yeah. Number 8 is, and 9 is grasping and grieving. Yeah. So those 3 are afflictions. Yeah. So if you study the 12 links, you see the sequence, right? Then you see the individual points. Then you see which category does each point fall into. It becomes, you start to understand it better in that way. Yeah. So there's 3 afflictions there. Yeah, the ignorance, grasping and grieving, 1, 8, and 9. So you can make all kind of charts if you want to. Yeah, there's probably charts available like that. In the monastery, we didn't have even a whiteboard. Forget, yeah, blackboards, of course. Those days was still blackboard time, I think. No, not, yeah, it was whiteboards, but we didn't have any whiteboards. And of course, no charts or no screen sharing. Everything is completely oral. Kind of, you have to memorize the material, then you attend the talks or the teachings. You know? Yeah, so that's why always the teacher would quote, Tambo Gyedan Kunyamons, and then you just repeat, and then you just try to remember. Yeah, sometimes those days I took notes, and people took notes. So that means there's 3 afflictions, Tambo Gyedan Kunyamons, right? Yeah, 1, 8, and 9. Yeah. Niba Chuba Leyentis, the second one, and the 10th one are karma. The second one is throwing karma, remember? Yeah. And number 10 is, what did I say? Establishing karma. Right? Yeah, it's a good translation. Establishing karma. Yeah, so Chuba, kaza, Niba Chuba Leyentis. Yeah, so the second and the 10th are karma. Yeah. Lak Duni Dugnayins. The remaining 7, yeah, do we have 7 left or not? 3 pneumon, 3 afflictions, 2 karma, is 5, then 7 left. Yeah, so the 7 remaining, lagma duni, dugnal yins, so they are suffering. The remaining 7 are suffering. So what are the remaining 7? You know, what do we have left? You know, consciousness, right? Name and form. Yeah. Then the sources. Yeah. Contact, feeling, and then because of birth and old age and death, they're all suffering. You see that? Yeah. There are results. That's another division you can. You can also say what are the causes and what are the results, for example. Yeah, but now first you see the category. So there's 2 aspects of karma, right? 3 of afflictions, yeah, and the remaining 7 are suffering. Yeah, you see that? Because our body and mind is contaminated, as we discussed before, right? So because of being contaminated, the contaminated aggregates, that's why it's suffering. Yeah, we saw also yesterday that even contaminated happiness is a suffering of change, right? Yeah. Yeah. So it means body and mind. And then the sources we have also is in their nature, because of the sources there's a lot of suffering. And then we come into contact and it's all contaminated because the objects and the mind that apprehends is created by power of karma and afflictions. Yeah, so it's contaminated. And then the feeling is also contaminated. Even pleasure is contaminated, right? Sakyeki deva, is it? Yeah, all pleasure, samsaric pleasures, so to say, is contaminated pleasure. Because it's always mixed with attachment, right? Or attachment or anger, whatsoever. So that means whatever feeling there is, there's also contaminated. And then, of course, birth, old age, and death is kind of also results of it's kind of an aspect of suffering, right? Yeah. So yeah, that's why it says 7 are suffering. Yeah. Yeah, is that clear? Yeah. So then another important point you can reflect: cause and effect aspects. In the Four Noble Truths yesterday, remember, we talked about how the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths in a particular sequence to wake us up and first say, oh, this is the truth of suffering. And then this is the cause of suffering, and this is the true cessation, and this is true paths. And then the cause and effect relation was one that the true cause of suffering creates the truth of suffering. The true paths creates the true cessation, right? Remember? Yeah. So also in the 12 links, there's cause and effect relationship. Yeah. If you understand that, then you have a complete presentation of the 12 links. We studied mostly the 12 links for 3 months, I think. Yeah, every day. So now we do it in 1 weekend, but that's how we normally. Yeah, it's quite an elaborate kind of text, and you have every link has its own definition and particular divisions, and there's a lot of debate back and forth. But yeah, I just summarize it for you, make it easy. So there's cause and effects. So the first 3 are causes, meaning ignorance is a cause, right? Ignorance, karmic formation, yeah? And consciousness. Yeah, because ignorance creates particular affliction that causes a particular karmic action that stops, leaves an imprint into consciousness. That's still at the time of the cause, right? You see that? Yeah. And 3 other causes are grasping, grieving, and becoming. Yeah, that leads up to this establishing karma. So the first 3, 1, 2, and 3, is the throwing karma aspect, right? Yeah, that's the potential to throw you another rebirth, right? Number 8, 9, and 10, grasping, craving, and becoming, is just before you've been thrown another rebirth, right? So that's the cause for the next rebirth. You see that? Yeah. So in this case, there's 6 causes. Yeah, you with me? Yeah. So the first 3, and then 8, 9, and 10. Yeah. Then, because there's causes, there's also results. So what are the results? 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. And 11 and 12. Because 4, 5, 6, and 7 is the body and the mind and the sense powers that comes after being reborn, right? Yeah, you see that? Yeah. So there are results. And with that result, also we have contact and feeling. Yeah. Yeah. So that happens when we have a body and we have a mind. And then, of course, old age, birth, old age, and so sickness and old age. Yeah, now I'm mixing up. So 11 and 12, birth and old age and death, right? Sickness is a part of it, but there's not one particular link as such. So there's also a result, right? To be reborn is a result, and old age and death is also a result within the context of the 12 links. You see that? Yes, is that a bit clear or not? Cause and effect relationship. Yeah. So then, the last point to make it complete, the presentation, is a question to you. These 12 links, all right, produces rebirth, you know. So for one particular, creation of karma and establishing that karma in a rebirth, how many lifetimes are needed? Minimum and maximum. Yeah, that's the question. And then I just drink something and you just think about it. Yeah. So what do you think? In one lifetime is not possible. Why not? Because it activates at the time of death and that throws you another lifetime, right? So it has to be more than one. You agree? So then how many? Is it possible in 2 or do you need 3? Or can you have 3? Or can you have 2? Multiple choice. Yeah, but then, yeah, so a minimum of 2 lifetimes, right? So, for example, you create a particular karma with the first 3 links, right? And that ripens at the time of death. And in this life. Yeah? And then the next life, it produces birth, old age, and death, as well as name and form and the other remaining ones. You see that? So you need a minimum of 2 lifetimes. Right? You agree or not? Understand? Yeah? Yeah. So then can it be longer than 2 lifetimes or not? How many? So a maximum of 3. A maximum of 3, but in between there can be many. For example, in this lifetime you create a particular cause, the throwing karma, the first 3 links. Then it doesn't ripen in this life. It doesn't ripen in the next life. And then 1,000 years down the line it gets to ripening. Yeah? And then it comes to ripening at time of death, and then it is the next birth, right? So it's 3 lifetimes. Creation of karma in this life, ripening in another lifetime, and the actual result of birth in the lifetime after that. You see that? So, and then in between there can be many lifetimes, 100 or thousands. But actually the completion of those 12 links happens then in 3 lifetimes, right? Because you create the karma in this life, that ripens 1,000 lifetimes further away, but it's also just one particular lifetime that it ripens, right? It's not that all those 1,000 lifetimes it ripens, it's not the case. So that means a maximum of 3 lifetimes. You see that? Yeah, it's kind of always a kind of important question. When you read Lamrim, yeah, if you read, for example, Pabonka Rinpoche's Lamrim, it gives a very clear, precise description of these points within a few pages. 3 or 4, yeah, maybe 5 pages. Yeah. In Lama Tsongkhapa's Lamrim Chema also, within a few pages, it gives you an overview. And then also talks about what are the causes, what are the results, you know, and also what we talked about, what are the afflictions, what is karma, and what are suffering. Yeah, so that's, now we have a bit the outline, and then you look at the picture, and then you look at the description I will send you, and then, yeah, you read Lamrim, Pabonka Rinpoche's Lamrim, for example, as well as Lama Tsongkhapa's Lamrim, and then you get a little bit more an idea what the 12 links is all about, as well as the 4 Noble Truths. Yeah, so that's more or less the material I was planning to cover. Yeah, I think that's according to my list. Yeah, so yeah, we talked about the 4 Noble Truths we started with. That's the essential teaching of the Buddha. Yeah, and then those 4 Noble Truths are very important to be understood, because if you understand the first 2, that's same as the 12 links. You see that? If you understand the cause of suffering, you know suffering. And then also you combine this with how those causes are being created in samsara with the 12 links. You see? So the first Noble Truths talks about the sequence of the 12 links. Right? Then another thing you can think about, the last two truths, the true paths and the true cessation, talks about the abandonment of these 12 links. Yeah, when the Buddha taught the Sprout Sutra, then he had a seed and a sprout. And he explained to the people, look, when all the conditions are ready, are there, then the seed grows into the sprout. Right? So there's a potential, and when all the conditions of heat, moisture, fertilization are present, it grows into the sprout. So in a similar way, if you create karma with the first 3 links, right, of ignorance, with an affliction, then karmic formation, seed is planted in consciousness, right? Then the seed is planted in consciousness, in the soil. Yeah, so sometimes we say the ignorance, right, is this kind of, together with this karma, is kind of the seed. Yeah, so the karma is, the potential is the seed. You plant it into consciousness. So consciousness is kind of the soil, right? But then it's sitting there, and if there's no heat, fertilization, or moisture, then it will not grow into a sprout, right? Yeah. So heat, you know, fertilization and moisture is kind of grasping, grieving, and becoming. You see that? Yeah. So then becoming is that it starts to grow. You see that? Yeah. So the becoming causes you to be establishing karma, as we call it. Yeah. That throws you into rebirth. So the Buddha explained like that. So there's a sequence. But then the Buddha said, because there's ignorance, there's karmic formation. Because there's karmic formation, there is consciousness. Because there's consciousness, there's name and form. Because there's name and form, there is the sources. Because of the sources, there's contact. Because of the contact, there's feeling. Because of the feeling, there's pleasure, there's attachment. Or displeasure, you know, there's aversion. Yeah? And because we cling to these kind of habituation patterns, there's grasping and grieving. And because of that, there's becoming. You know, there's establishing. And because of that, there's birth. And because of that, there's old age and death. Same thing, you know. It's a cause and effect relationship. Same as a seed, when it has the right condition, it grows, right? You see that? Yeah. But then the Buddha said, if you take away ignorance, there's no karmic formation. If you don't have karmic formation, there's no seeds planted in consciousness. If there's no seed planted in consciousness, there's no contaminated aggregates. If there's no contaminated aggregates, there's no contaminated sources. If there's no contaminated sources, there's no contaminated contact. If there's no contaminated contact, there's no contaminated feeling. If there's no contaminated feeling, there's no grasping and craving. If there's no grasping and craving, there's no becoming. If there's no becoming, there's no birth. If there's no birth, there's no old age and death. You see? It's kind of 2 sequences. So in the Four Noble Truths also, same thing. If there's cause of suffering, there's suffering. But if you take away the cause, there's no suffering. Right? If you don't meditate on a true path, there's no true cessation. But if you meditate on true paths, there's true cessation. You see that? Yeah, so the cause and effect relationship is very important to understand, because if you take out one chain, you prevent the next one from coming into being, right? Yeah. So in a similar way, if there's another aspect, if you don't have realized emptiness yet, but when your mind comes in contact with an object and there's feeling, instead of grasping and craving to things and just observe, it cuts so much kind of suffering for the future. You see that? So within the 12 links also, you can play with things. You see that? Yeah. So when we meet objects and there's pleasure, we get touched. And when there's displeasure, we have aversion. And the stronger those afflictions are, the stronger the problem. You see that? The bigger the problem. So also within those 12 links, you can, even if you haven't eliminated ignorance yet, you can prevent a lot of suffering from happening by being just merely observing when there's a feeling of pleasure or displeasure, and don't act with these kind of strong destructive emotions. Right? So also in that context, you can see, you can play around quite a bit. Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of many aspects to the 12 links. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's basically your homework for for today, tomorrow, and the rest of your life. Yeah. Yeah. So good luck. Yeah. And if there's any more questions, then we still have quite some minutes to discuss if needed. Yeah, the 12 links is quite a complex system, but very profound. You know, when you understand well, it gives a lot of incredible insights into kind of, you know, how we actually are born in this cycle. Yeah, Maya? Yeah, unmute.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, thank you. I have a question regarding to purification practice based on what you just learned. So can we, for instance, say that when we are doing purification practices, especially in our retreat of that, in a way, because of the way it's structured, especially if you do it with more people, you have afflictions coming up, and also you address these afflictions. But then, because of the way, you know, the four-point power works, you bring it up, and then you just are, because of the way it structures, you are habituated in a way to think in a positive patterns of how to solve those problems. So then in that regard, you know, it's sort of like we are breaking patterns and then, you know, create maybe a more positive way of handling things, and then how we act in generally. So in a way, can we say it's sort of like also, above other things, a powerful tool to be able to do that?
Yeah, I mean, these four opponent powers are incredible beneficial, right? And not only beneficial, but to be able to purify, if you have all those factors complete, it gets the kind of incredible potential to do that, especially with regret, if it's really well understood. And if regret is well understood, then automatically the power of resolve comes. So regret meaning have a complete insight in the negativity that is being created. If that insight is very well done, then also it will prevent emotions from becoming manifest in the future. Right? So it's a kind of, if emotions come up in the future or in retreat, then because you understand this regret so well, if you do something wrong or you let those emotions take over, it has negative side effects. Right? So then with this aspect of regret, not only the purification aspect, but also in the near future or during the retreat, you're capable of seeing the faults of the afflictions as well. Right? So it has, in that regard also positive.
Yeah, I was thinking about the aviator, you know, like what you talked about with Leonardo DiCaprio, about the fact that he, you know, he had to learn again how to develop a more healthy patterns of how to do things through, you know, through this method. So I thought maybe that also has some connections, you know, with that. So we habituate in a way in ourselves to act in a different way, and it's so strong that then you can bring it to life. I mean, you know, here and there, you know, comes and goes. But yeah, I was.
Yeah, it's true, because that's really true with these purification practices. When it's really strong regret and you habituate yourself to that, you understand, if I act in this way, it harms me and others, right? So that helps you also not only to purify, but also to prevent you from making the same mistake. And that habituation is very positive. Yeah. So that's the four opponent powers are very, 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 not only for the purification, but also to grow in your attitude towards others.
Yeah, but also the power of a long retreat, you know. So this is what I was thinking about, you know, when you do a long retreat, this really helps in a way to make it more, I guess, I don't know. Thank you.
Yeah, habituation, right? That builds up. I mean, that's the benefit of retreat, because when we do our own contemplations on a daily basis, or you do a contemplation within a retreat, it's different. Yeah, it's kind of, you settle down. So that's why these people, and the BP, then we're gonna do some retreats, and then you know, that's kind of already in the pipeline, and that's, people know then how to do a retreat in a group, and then over time they learn how to do it themselves, and then there's great benefit. Yeah, because retreat, even if you have just take a week off a year, it produces much more than you can do over many days on a daily basis, right? Very important. Yeah, Carol?
in what context is the teachings on the 16 aspects of the Four Noble Truths taught?
In the context of the Four Noble Truths, you can do that, yeah. But I didn't do that because it's quite complicated. It doesn't belong to the discovering aspect.
Right. So, I mean, where can one find those teachings in which study? That's what I'm asking. Where?
Yeah, you do the BP, right? So then it will come up. Especially, Lamrim, probably not that detailed, but especially with chapter 4 of the ornament, clear realization.
Okay,
There's a very clear explanation of the 60 aspects and how to relate it with meditation on emptiness, for example.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and the 4 close placements of mindfulness. Yeah, it's a complex, 16 aspects is quite complex. So, at that time probably we'll be explaining mainly. Yeah, but very interesting. But you can read in Lamrim, it doesn't really come up though, but I mean, just wait, just hang in there and it will come. Yeah, it's okay, Carol? Yeah, I mean,
I realized it's quite a big gap in my knowledge.
Yeah, Ale. Okay, if you really want to read, there's probably, in Geshe-la books, probably. Yeah. Four Noble Truths, right? Yeah. So Geshe-la, one of the previous teacher here, he had this books about, one book is called about Four Noble Truths.
Okay,
and
thank you.
The aspect are explained. So maybe a good read for you. Yeah. Yeah? Okay, c'est ça. Très bien, exactly 1 o'clock.
I think there's one question from Laura also in the chat.
In the chat.
She's asking, where's the Bardo in the Wheel of Life?
Ale, the Bardo in the Wheel of Life, very good question. So the Wheel of Life is existence. Yeah, that's the links of existence. So that meaning the rebirths, so to say. So that is not talking about the Bardos. Yeah, so that's why it's not, the Bardo is not a form as existence. Yeah. So the Bardo is an in-between state. So in the 12 links, you can put it between 10 and 11. Yeah, because 10 is becoming, 11 is birth. So what happens at the time of death, then, karma gets activated, with grasping, grieving, and becoming. Then the consciousness leaves the body and goes in what we call the intermediate state, or Bardo. Bar means in between, right? Yeah, Bardo is just in between. In between life. Which life? The present one and the future one. And that can be a second, or that can be a few days, or 7 days, or up to 49 days, generally speaking, according to the Abhidharma literature. Yeah, so that's kind of in-between state. And if you're born in that in-between state, you already have a similar kind of aspect or subtle form as your future lifetime. Yeah, so there's kind of, similar aspects to that. And there's many Bardo beings. So the different Bardo beings for the different births, the rebirths they're going to take, they have similar aspects and they see each other, and there's a lot of things to say about going up or going down or going sideways, or different colors. Yeah, but that's a completely different topic, and that's not that important for us from the point of view of understanding the 12 links. It's just something in between there, because at the time of becoming, especially according to many scholars of the past, including Asanga, it's already been decided at the time of death where you are reborn. It's just in between the Bardo is kind of a period. Though there are also other commentaries or possibilities to change the karma when the being is in the Bardo. And that's why it's very important when people pass away to do prayers for them. Yeah, so traditional, we do prayers every 7 days because the Bardo being dies every 7 days. So that's kind of a tradition to be kept. Yeah, and if you do prayers for people who are passed away in that period, it's very important because we have a good karmic connection with those who passed away. I mean, those who you know. So then, whatever positive thing we do, or you request others to do prayers, that's why in Jamyang we always have kind of dedication lists. We do mainly doing the Medicine Buddha Puja every week, for example. So that means that beings in the Bardo, they're very sensitive. And they have clairvoyance, and they can move with the speed of consciousness, not with the speed of light. With the speed of consciousness is much faster. So speed of light is kind of very Yeah, it's not the fastest one. So, but anyway, so they move and they have clairvoyance, so they know if we do something good for them, automatically they get positive results from that. Yeah, and that can sometimes help to activate some positive things in the mind streams. Yeah, there's many other practices. The sur offering we do every second week here in Jamyang also to help them. Yeah, so there's many things that can be done. Yeah. So that's about the being, but it's not a part of the 12 links, because the 12 links talks about existence of life, and Bardo is in between two lives. Yeah, it's a technical answer. It's a debate answer actually. But, yeah, that's how we normally classify in the Bardo. Yeah, but there's a lot of things to say. People are very interested in Bardo, and there's books being written about it. But yeah, it's not that important to because it's just like a dream, right? It's kind of better to prepare in a Lamrim way, and then you don't have to worry about Bardo, and everything will be okay. Yeah. Yeah? Okay, Cesar, that's it? Yeah, okay, perfect. On time, more or less. Thank you very much for your interest. And then, yeah, have fun when I send you the link and the description. You can go over the 12 links. Because the 12 links is a very important aspect of understanding samsara, and how to be born and how to stop it, as we just said. But if this is not there, then next doesn't come. The cause and effect relationship. Yeah. And then read those books, I indicated, you get a good understanding. Yeah. So then dedicate for the spreading of the Buddha Dharma and long and healthy life Christian gurus, all the wishes be spontaneously fulfilled, as well as for all beings to establish the realizations of bodhicitta and emptiness, and think oneself making dedication, and the dedication itself and the aim is empty inherent existence and in nature of dependent ordination. That's why they come true. Dagi jine sabe gewa di tenda dowa gunda. Gewa jason lozan draba. Tempim nim lindu sa jo gade rawe korwe singa so. Pendan deva mawe jungwe. Genere sikwa tenzin gyatso. Japa shite badu thank you ji. To sam shiten jam gyum yewe. Tenzin gyum bewe gunze dobo. Go sung go vedele me ba zo Janjo sanjo rinpo che ma ye ba ki gu chi ye ba nyam ba me ba ya go ne kong de ba ba jo toni ta ye ba na ge gu chi ye ba nyam ba me ba ya go ne kong de ba jo. As long as space remains, and as long as migrators remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the suffering of my being. May the King of Dharma, Tsongkhapa's way of Dharma practice flourish, and the omens of the best of rights, and all conditions circumstances be complete. To the power of having made account of loving to the power of having made single-point requests to you, Lord Tsongkhapa, may all unfortunate manifestations of the degenerate age, illness, famine, quarrel, epidemics, coming spirits, appearances, and all excellent conditions increase. Please bless me that all my wishes be fulfilled. By invoking the power of loving kindness and compassion of Jamyang, and through the force of making extensive prayers, may all sickness, war, fighting, famine be pacified, so that all beings have long, healthy, happy lives. May the glorious gurus' lives be long and stable, and may beings equally extend of happiness, peace, and happiness. And may others, without exception, equally merit and purify negativities, and may be blessed to quickly attain Buddhahood. Gewa Gyume Lama Dame Jidan Sara Lamge Yanda Rabzo Doje Changi Goban. All right, thank you so much for your interest, and then yeah, enjoy the rest of the day. It's it's not raining, but that's what it is. Yeah, so enjoy your day, and then
Thank you, Geshe-la.
next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.